What if Ahsoka was the chosen one? Part 2. Before Plo could even finish talking, Ahsoka readily agreed to undergo the initiate trials. The thought of becoming a Padawan excited her, especially if she could be apprenticed to Plo. Plo couldn't relate her acceptance, and preparations for her trial started, though she continued taking classes with her clanmates until then. The morning when her trials were ready, a Zabrak that she didn't recognize led her to a room near the base of the central tower. Inside were several more individuals, some of which she recognized were members of the High Council, but sadly, Plo wasn't there. The Jedi that had brought her there sat down at the table in the center of the room and motioned for her to sit across from him, which she did. From there, he asked her to tell him about the Jedi Code. She did so, but he frequently interrupted her, asking what she believed certain parts mean, or how one would carry out other parts of the code. Ahsoka believed most of the Jedi Code, but there are segments that she found difficult to acknowledge. This was primarily because she felt that she should feel positive emotions, and the fact that she had no control of when she felt negative emotions. Though she found these parts of the code hard to accept, she suspected that she mostly knew what the Jedi wanted to hear. Her assumptions proved correct after a lengthy discussion when she was informed that she had passed the first trial. Another individual that she also didn't know, this time a Twi'lek, walked towards her from the group that had been watching her. She told Ahsoka to follow her, and as she did, most of the other Jedi trailed behind them. They arrived at the training halls where she followed the Twi'lek to the center of the room, leaving the rest watching the wall. 2 training sabers were thrown to them, and Ahsoka readied herself for the only thing this could mean. However, before anything could start, the Twi'lek approached and handed Ahsoka a blindfold, telling her that once she put it on, the test would begin. Though nervous, she complied. Being a Togruta, she was better suited for this than most others. Togrutas could partially sense things around them using their montrals to echolocate after all. Ahsoka both felt and sensed the Twi'lek move, and she moved to counter. They clashed several times. But, like the first trial, Ahsoka was trying to figure out what they were testing. She doubted as if she could hold her own. Nobody would expect that from her. At least she hoped. She was barely staying in the fight to begin with, and it was all because she was relying on pure instinct and spontaneous movements. A thought struck her then, and following it, she switched from erratic moves of instinct to a genuine lightsaber form, to Makashi. The fight got a bit easier, almost as if her opponent's strikes were encouraging the proper use of this form. Then things instantly fell apart as her moves instead started countering Makashi, throwing Ahsoka on the back foot again. Panicking, she switched to Ataru. It was the last form she was confident in besides Form 1, and Ahsoka prayed that this would be enough. Thankfully, after a few more clashes in a similar manner to before, the Twi'lek stopped the duel and told her to take the blindfold off. When she did, she was congratulated, being informed that she had passed the second trial. Excitement coursed through her, replacing any worry that she had. This not only seemed relatively easy, but it was also surprisingly fun. Ahsoka was then guided to the Room of 1,000 Fountains, where she saw a graying human meditating. She was told to sit across from him and join him in meditation, which she did for what felt like an eternity. The excitement from before quickly vanished during it, replaced by boredom and restlessness. This was by far the thing she disliked most about life as a Jedi. When he started speaking, she nearly had a cry of joy. He had her do a few exercises in the Force, from lifting objects, taming a bird, and other, more intricate exercises using solely the Force. They were all easy for her, though annoying to keep doing them. What often kept her entertained during classes was playing around with things using the Force. Connecting with the occasional bird was the best as it felt more natural and was easier to do. This trial was now one of the funnest things she had been allowed to do, since using the Force without needing to was often frowned upon. It was kind of disheartening when he smiled and nodded, praising her for her control of the Force, but she knew that she had passed again. A master came up to her a moment later, telling her that she was ready to move on to the next part of Jedi training. But first, she would need to participate in the apprentice tournament that would soon take place. From there, if she gained the attention of someone who wanted to be her master, she would become a Padawan. Otherwise, she would be assigned to the service corps at the discretion of the council reassignments. Ahsoka didn't let the last thing she said get to her. Plo would become her master anyway. Even after she was guided back to the creche, she couldn't stop thinking about the future. She was nearly a Padawan, and she wasn't even 11 years old. Thinking back, and not wanting to disappoint Plo, while she waited for the apprentice tournament, she finally began to take her studies seriously. Even this was second to how much she trained with the lightsaber. Usually alone, but sometimes with someone she managed to convince to duel her. Before she knew it, the day of the annual apprentice tournament arrived. For this, she was led to the combat training chamber, where over 30 other younglings ended up gathering. They were each given a training saber, and told that victory would only be achieved when they struck their opponent 3 times with said saber. One by one, they were paired and sent into the center of the bowl-shaped arena, leaving the other younglings to watch. As time passed, Ahsoka grew nervous. All these younglings appeared to be older than her, and obviously knew more than her. Some also blatantly fought dirty, which was surprisingly mostly allowed. When her turn finally came, Ahsoka was trying to keep her confidence. She only knew the basics of all of the foreign sites 2 and 4, and she wasn't proficient even those. As she made her way into the arena, she was thinking of ways to use the Force to win the duels. That was her only advantage against the other younglings. Her opponent was a human boy who was rather well built. He sneered at her as she came to face him, clearly looking down on her. She was half his size, to be fair. As the duel started, Ahsoka relied on Ataru, knowing that she wouldn't be able to compete with his strength. She also pushed him around the Force, which definitely angered him. Carefully and patiently, she was able to land 3 strikes on him, while he only managed to land 1 on her. He had made it count though, putting enough force behind it that there was already a bruised form in his testament. His face hardened as she was declared the victor, and she was relieved when he stormed off without further confrontation. She was able to relax and rest her bruised side as she watched the rest of the duels. Afterwards, they were sent to get something to eat before they reconvened their second round. As they returned to the training chamber, Ahsoka saw that several obstacles, balance beams, and swings were now in the arena. Everyone was here again, but only the victors from the previous duels were matched this time. If one had thought the first round had been difficult, then this was unimaginable. The first pair fought in the dark, the second in the rain, the third in scorched heat, all while they had to navigate the arena that had become linear and full of distractions. Ahsoka was in the 4th bout taking place, and this time she was against a female Mikian. Ahsoka tensed as she entered the arena, waiting in anticipation for what they would inevitably have to contend with. A yelp still escaped her as she was suddenly floating along with her opponent and everything else in the arena. There was no longer any gravity. How had they even done this? This distraction left her open and unable to block the Mikian's first strike, though she threw her away with the Force before she could get in another. They bounced around the arena after that, launching off the floating objects towards each other in an attempt to get in a hit. Ahsoka managed to hit the Mikian's foot, but after that, they couldn't seem to do anything to the other, too hesitant to get close enough or to stop moving. Frustrated and reaching the end of her patience, Ahsoka used the Force to throw herself at the Mikian. Her eyes widened and she raised her training saber to block, but Ahsoka instead grabbed it. Though she figured it would count as a hit against her, this allowed her to get in several quick strikes. Before she could worry if this was even allowed, they fell to the ground as gravity was re-established, and relief coursed through her when she was announced the victor. The Mikian congratulated her, introducing herself as Reva, and they talked a bit more afterwards while the rest of the duels happened. They had to part ways though, as the winners of the second part of the trial were separated from the rest, though as they were leaving, Ahsoka noticed that more duels were commencing with the ones who had lost in the first round. The 8 younglings that had won the second round, including her, were left with their device for the rest of the day before they were led to a separate group sleeping area for the night. Sometime in the dead of night, a Jedi burst into training sabers. They shouted this was the final match, waking everyone up while they threw the sabers into the center of the room. Most of the younglings scrambled to training sabers, but Ahsoka stayed away, still groggy and trying to understand what was happening. How could this be the final fight? Perhaps it was to be expected though. From what she understood, these fights were not just testing their abilities, but also how they would react in adapted situations. Ahsoka stayed out of the scuffle initially, using her small size in the Force to keep away. Hardly anyone paid attention to her, likely due to her seemingly non-threatening appearance. However, as soon as the youngling unintentionally backed into her with a training saber in hand, she snatched it from him, knocking him out of the competition in the process. Believing that doing nothing would be the equivalent of getting disqualified, She now charged into the melee that was taking place in the center of the room. It was brutal, to the point where she wondered why the Jedi observing didn't interfere. Fists and random objects were used instead of training sabers, with several others grappling on the floor. Ahsoka targeted the ones with training sabers first. They were the only ones that could disqualify anyone, and thus the only real threat. Only a human girl posed a real challenge against her, forcing her to use a Makashi against her. By the time she knocked them out, Ahsoka had already been struck twice, which made her more cautious. Thankfully, the rest were either too tired or distracted to react before it was too late, and she mostly simply struck them 3 times while they fought with each other. The last 2 realized it so, and attempted to get a saber, one managing it. She disqualified the unlucky one that didn't, but the exhaustion was weighing on her. Just as she landed the 3rd hit on the fortunate one, he also landed a hit on her, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Healers rushed in, signaling the end of the fight, treating them before they were all moved to another sleeping area, where they were told to get some actual sleep. The Pantoran Jedi that said this smirked and added that this time, it was real, and they wouldn't be disturbed until morning. Ahsoka didn't even question this as she collapsed into one of the beds, asleep as soon as she closed her eyes. The next day, many of the younglings had Jedi Masters and Knights come to them, seeing if they would like to become their apprentice. They, of course, all accepted. Even as the day dragged on though, nobody came to her. She only wanted Plo to be her master, so this was fine. But why hadn't he come for her yet? The answer came when he finally did arrive. Because of how close he was with her, the Jedi High Council had forbidden him from taking her as an apprentice. There are still many others that are interested in being her master, but because of this, the Council was unsure of how to proceed. They were tempted to let her choose amongst the ones that were interested in her, but they were unsure if it was wise if she really was a chosen one. Ahsoka found it frustrating. The Council refused to give her any benefits for being the chosen one, but they were also controlling her life like she was a chosen one. They just didn't even make up their minds. Since there was nothing she could do, she was forced to return to the creche with her previous clanmates until they made a decision. Thankfully, she was exempt from classes since she had passed trials, so Plo began freely teaching her anything he felt like, as if she were his apprentice. Master T also made appearances, mentoring Ahsoka when Plo was gone. It took several weeks for the Council to finally reach a decision. It was enough time that the Council Reassignment had gone involved, wondering if they should take responsibility for her. Her continued staying in their previous clan sleeping area had also drawn attention, and their previous clanmates seemed to now openly despise her after proving that she was better than them. This could finally end though, as Ahsoka heard their decision when Plo and Master T came to find her. Though many were hesitant, it was decided that Master Shock T would be taking her as her apprentice. Ahsoka was ecstatic as Master T, the only other one she would have wanted to be her master if not Plo. They hoped Ahsoka moved to a new accommodation in the Padawan living area before they went to the Master T's room in the Master's area. There, Master T pulled out a box, inside of which were cords and beads. Master T explained, telling Ahsoka that these are Silka beads, and they're now going to make her Padawan braid. It was more enjoyable than Ahsoka thought it would be, and they spent the rest of the day making a complete head decoration for her along with her Padawan braid. The next day, her official first day of becoming a Padawan started early, and consisted entirely of testing and training. The Master T had been there for the majority of her lightsabers learning. She didn't know how Ahsoka fared in any other aspect. So, she tested her, finding the gaps in her knowledge and skills. Several days of this followed, and Ahsoka began to dread each new day. Thankfully, after just over a week, Master T was satisfied, and to reward Ahsoka, she took her on a tour of the Senate District on Coruscant, where she was able to meet several politicians, senators, and many other people. The Chancellor of the Republic also approached her, striking up a conversation and asking about her. Though she figured he was being nice, she didn't have a good feeling around him, and her master appeared wary as well, politely excusing himself before leading Ahsoka away. Another few weeks passed before Master T finally took her off Coruscant. Ahsoka had thus far kept her second kyber crystal, which was still in the necklace, hidden in her room, but she was wary of leaving it there while she was gone. It was uncomfortable to wear, but she slipped it on before she left. They stayed mostly in the core and mid-rim, only occasionally going into the outer rim. Her master made sure that these outings didn't interfere with the training, and Ahsoka was often more tired during these than she had the first week, but she preferred this. She enjoyed being away from the temple and immersed in nature. She also met a wide variety of people and species, and whenever the opportunity presented itself, she tried talking with them. Master T mostly allowed this, enabling her curiosity and seeming to enjoy every minute of it. She also tried to duel with Ahsoka whenever she asked as well. It was practically the only training Ahsoka enjoyed, and her master was happy to comply. During one of these bouts, one which was more about burning energy than learning, the necklace came out from under her shirt. Master T immediately inquired about it, fortunately more curious than angry, and though Ahsoka wanted to continue to hide it, she knew that she couldn't anymore. Hesitantly, she took it off and opened the compartment, letting the kyber crystal fall into her palm. She had often enjoyed looking at it, and had practically memorized its shape entirely, but now guilt and worry replaced that wonder. Was she supposed to have it, and would Master T take it from her? Master T asked for an explanation, and Ahsoka complied, telling her everything about how it had separated, and how she felt that she should hide it. Master T simply nodded, a warm smile spreading across her face as she reassured Ahsoka, telling her that though having 2 kyber crystals wasn't common, it wasn't unheard of or against the rules. Though it was unusual to have one as a decoration, she would allow it, but she urged Ahsoka to think about building a second lightsaber. It was why they got kyber crystals in the first place, and if the Force gave her 2, then it likely meant that she should have 2 lightsabers. Ahsoka, relieved, agreed to think about building a second lightsaber, not even knowing that had been an option. The next morning, Master T sat her down and handed her an actual necklace, or rather a pendant with a locket, one that she had just bought at the nearby town. Ahsoka's eyes watered as she thanked her master and transferred the kyber crystals to the locket. Not including the silk beads, this was the first physical gift she had been given. It only took a month before she built her second lightsaber, a shoulder that was recommended for dual wielding, though she still wore a new necklace. The shoulder was the same color and design as her first one, albeit a little shorter. Master T did her best to train her how to dual wield most effectively, but when they were at the temple on Coruscant, she often listened to the help of others that had experience and know-how. Ahsoka soon became adept in reverse grip dual wielding, and with her master's help, she adapted it to forms 2 and 4. Merging it with form 2 Makashi was by far the hardest, but after much dedication, Ahsoka managed to do it, though she couldn't use reverse grip while doing so. A few months after Ahsoka turned 12, her master took her to Shili. Her purpose was for Ahsoka to take part in the tradition that many Togrutas attempted to do, to kill an Akul alone. Akuls were known to destroy entire villages, and were extremely good hunters, so the Togruan hunting party was usually gathered to deal with them. The second option though, was an Akul hunt, where a single Togruta went to kill the Akul. It was something that many aspiring Togrutas attempted, but few succeeded in because of just how dangerous a single Akul was. If they managed it, then they could take its teeth and make headdress of them, like the one Master T wore. Ahsoka wasn't too nervous, until they got to an outlying village where Master T took her lightsabers, replacing them with a rudimentary knife, spear, and pack. To complete the Akul hunt by tradition, she would have to kill it the way the other Togrutas killed it. Without further explanation or prep, Ahsoka nervously set out the first thing the next morning, going southeast as directed by the village chief. Within half a day of walking, she found herself exiting the forest where their village called home and entering a large grassland. The reddish orange and white tulle grass scraped at her chest and legs as she walked through it. She couldn't help but laugh as she realized that her skin and stripes actually kind of blend in with it. After pausing and clearing for a break at midday, she continued. She didn't exactly know what she was looking for, just that Akul had orange fur and was a formidable beast strong enough to threaten entire villages, so she tried to remain alert. However, as the day wore on, she struggled to do so. The heat made her sluggish, and the thought that this was her home world brought a sense of ease. The warning she felt in the forest was the first thing she had told her something was off. Or perhaps it was her senses. Whatever told her, she tended to start anxiously scanning her surroundings, but she couldn't see anything. The tulle grass rustled in the wind, and the sun was starting to cast shadows from the forest nearby. Ahsoka froze. She didn't feel any wind, and the tulle grass around her was still, so why was it rustling in front of her? An orange that was lighter than the grass caught her attention, but As she blinked, the form that she had just become aware of was flying towards her. Ahsoka wanted to stand her ground, but instinct drove her and she threw herself to the side. Its claws through Carter's shirt, tearing it open. She didn't have time to think of what could happen if she was a second slower. Instead, she desperately looked for the wood spear amongst the dense grass, hating that she had dropped it in her frantic escape. Because of this, she narrowly missed a jaws that cool when it attacked again. It didn't miss its swipe this time though, swatting her with the spawn and sending her sprawling away. Gasping for air and too scared to see if there was blood, she gave up on the spear and drew the knife which had miraculously stayed on her belt. She swung it wildly as a cool approach, miraculously managing to draw some blood which caused her to create some distance. Ahsoka turned with it as it circled her. Knife fell out in front of her. Sounds started dull as her body heaved with frantic breaths. Her arms trembled in front of her as her vision began to darken at the edges. It only took her shaking arms lowering a fraction for the Akula to pounce again. She tried to move out of the way again, but it anticipated this. Fur and muscle slammed into her, stunning her and only regaining focus as drops of drool fell from the Akula's open mouth. A mouth that was directly above her head and full of sharp teeth. The Akula stared down at her, its snout close enough that she could reach up and touch it. Its hot breath slammed her like waves, making it hard to breathe herself. It was then that she realized that the knife was no longer in her hand, and she was too scared to look away to find it. Instead, trembling, trying to keep still, she gingerly fell around her. Though her left arm was pinned on the Akula's paw that was also somehow on her waist. She had landed with her right arm sprawled above her head. As she fell around this arm, her hand brushed against something smooth. But before she could contemplate what it was, the Akula moved. So grabbed the object, only registering it was wood as she brought it forward as the Akula moved to bite her, its claws digging into her side and arm. The stick struck the Akula's neck, and, with it moving forward and her desperate use of the Force, it sank deep into its flesh. A snarling whimper escaped as it thrashed backwards. So tried to keep hold of what she now realized was a spear that she had lost. But blood had already coated it, and it slipped from her grasp as the Akula whined and whipped its head. So instead, she scrambled back from the giant beast. This was pointless, as the Akula was only up for a moment more before it collapsed to the ground, its side only weakly rising once more before it went unnaturally still. The entire area seemed to become eerily quiet as she stared at the still form, as she stared at the life she just took.